produce loads of fruit throughout the season. Hey, I'm Brian with Next Level Gardening. If you're looking to join an online garden community that offers tips, tricks, and support to help take your garden to the next level, you're in the right place. Get started now by clicking subscribe, hit the bell so you never miss anything. Now let's get growing. Tomatoes and eggplant might seem like a weird pairing, but they are related, along with potatoes and peppers. They're all parts of the nightshade family. Let me know in the comment section if you grow both and what your favorite varieties are. The seeds are sown in the same way for the same reason. The only difference is tomatoes will germinate in cooler soil than eggplants will. But we'll get to that in a minute. Both tomatoes and eggplant seeds can be started indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. They can be planted into the garden as transplants about 2 to 3 weeks after your last frost date. So before we get started with the process, I'm going to go through the varieties that I'm going to be growing this year. So in a previous video, I talked about how I was going to be growing more hybrid seeds this year rather than heirlooms. Now, I did have some people concerned that I was saying not to grow heirlooms. That's not at all what I was saying. Have a couple of heirlooms every year that you try, and then when you find some you like, then stick with those. So, I will be growing Kellogg's Breakfast. I'm going to be growing Burpee's Super Steak Hybrid. I'm going to be growing Burpee's Super Sauce Hybrid. And that is another thing that I realized last year is I need to grow more for saving, for sauce type of tomatoes. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be growing a couple of small tomatoes, obviously Sun Gold because that's my favorite, sweetest tomato I've ever had, and then a 5-star Great F1 Hybrid. Speaking of sweet and wonderful tomatoes, I realized you guys must have found our business address on our website because we hadn't really been checking the P.O. Box very often because there was never a need to. There wasn't much ever in there. However, this past week we went out and it was packed full of stuff from you guys. Like, thank you, first of all. But one of the things that came was some seeds from a viewer named Peter. And he said that he has driven hours to get these seeds or seedlings because they're that good. They're called Pink Princess Tomato. They are an heirloom. And 62 days to maturity, it says. That's pretty fast for a tomato. So thank you, Peter. Thank you for everyone who've sent some things. We're still going through them, but I really appreciate that. And then last year I grew an eggplant. I forget the name. I'll put it on the screen. Unfortunately, the fruits weren't as good. They had thick skin and they had a lot of seeds. So I have heard that Asian Delight, it's an F1 hybrid, has thin skin and not as many seeds. So I'm going to try that one this year. So now I'm going to first talk about what I'm going to sow the seeds in container-wise. And that is what I've always used, and that is red Solo cups. And these have been used for years. These are probably going to last me many, many more years before I have to get rid of them. And you can use any color of Solo cup you want. It doesn't matter. I did have somebody just recently comment on an old video asking why I don't use clear cups so I could see the moisture level and I could see the roots in the cup. And that is because roots like it dark. In nature, they're in the ground. They don't get light. So then they said, I answered that to them, and then they said, well, why don't you put that inside of a Solo cup? Well, then you're just using twice the amount of plastic. So for me, I've always done it this way, and it's just always worked. So the only thing you need to do with the Solo cups is to put some drainage in them. And you can use scissors and just snip around the edge, maybe 4 places. You can use a drill to put one big hole or a few smaller holes. I had a viewer say they use a soldering iron, which I guess that would work as well. Might put off some weird gases, so maybe definitely be outside when you do that. And you can drill through several cups at once to save time. And I really love the Solo cup because they're the perfect size. I believe this is the 16 ounce. Is this the 16 ounce? They have the 8 ounce and they have like a 24 ounce, but this size is really good for in between. You could go 24 if you have to leave them in. If you're growing them in, you start them really early and have to have them last for maybe 2 months in the 2 or 3 months in the house. But otherwise, the 16 ounce works great. I'm not going to be able to plant my tomatoes out in the garden for probably 6 weeks or so at least, because right now I have a new tomato bed that I still have to build, and the other 2 are full of peas and and one still has tomatoes going from last year. And you can use whatever you want. You can use recycled containers from the garden center. The only thing you want to look for is you want a tall container, more tall than short and squatty. And the reason is because eggplants and tomatoes actually grow roots on their stem. And the sooner you can get them to develop these roots, the stronger and more vigorous the plant is going to be when you finally put it out into the garden. And a more robust plant is going to produce more fruit. It has better ability to fight off pests and disease throughout the season. And this method works for both determinate and indeterminate varieties of tomatoes. Now, the growing medium we're going to be sowing the seeds in, I'm just using a pre-moistened seed starting mix. I will link all of the products that I talk about here are going to be linked down below. Pre-moistened is important, and it should have the feeling of a wrung-out sponge. So when you squeeze it, you might get a few drops out of there, but really it's just going to be nice and crumbly. All right, so when it comes to filling the cups, we're only going to fill the cups a little less than halfway up. This is really important going forward. So two seeds in the container, and we're going to press them down a little bit and just cover them with a tiny bit of potting mix. And you just want to bury them about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. Now the extra seed, the second seed, is just an insurance policy, so in case one doesn't germinate, you've still got a plant for each cup. Now I've been asked about soaking the seeds overnight for better germination. I've never done that with tomatoes. I've never had a germination problem. They're fairly easy to germinate. If you want to do that, that's fine, but to me that's just an extra step. Now, if both of the seeds germinate, you want to wait until they both have their first set of true leaves. The first 2 leaves that come out of the soil are the seed leaves, and then the second pair of leaves, which look like actual tomato leaves, those are the first true leaves. I fertilize mine every 2 weeks, half strength, with a liquid organic fertilizer. Now I use Neptune's Harvest fish and seaweed